In the early hours of June 10th, 2016, at 2:59 a.m., 911 dispatchers in Gresham, Portland, Oregon, got a terrifying call from the 100 block of Southwest Eastman Parkway. A woman was crying for help, saying she had been attacked.
911.
Oh, I'm trying to kill me.
911, how can I help you?
I'm trying to kill me.
What happened?
I'm really on first tragically.
Somebody tried. Where is this person at now?
I'm not here.
Do you need an ambulance?
Yes. No.
Do you know the name of the person that did this to you?
No.
Are you bleeding a lot?
This desperate call broke the quiet of the small town, leaving the community shocked and marking the start of a tragic and unforgettable case. The caller was 34-year-old Anastasia Hester, known to everyone as Annie. A devoted mother and kind-hearted woman, Annie was brutally attacked in her one-bedroom apartment on the night of June 10th, 2016. The first screams were heard around 11:15 p.m., but the desperate 911 call came in hours later, at 2:59 a.m. Paramedics and police rushed to the scene, arriving within minutes. When police entered Annie's apartment, they found bloody footprints leading from the living room to the front door. Annie was discovered in the back of the apartment, near a sofa bed, suffering from over 60 stab wounds. Though she was still responsive when emergency responders arrived, her injuries were so severe that she lost her fight for life shortly after reaching the hospital. Despite the best efforts of medical staff, Annie was pronounced dead in the early hours of the morning. Annie had lived in Gresham all her life. After losing her father as a teenager, she grew very close to her mother and stepfather. She was described as reliable, assertive, and hardworking, often taking on a leadership role with her siblings and at every job she held. Anastasia Hester was born on October 26, 1981, in Portland, Oregon. Growing up in Gresham, Annie graduated from Gresham High School in 2000 and later pursued studies in childhood development at Corvallis. After returning to Gresham, she attended Mount Hood Community College. Annie was known for her nurturing nature, her kindness, and her resilience. She was a loving mother, a devoted wife, and a hardworking individual, balancing various roles in her life. Annie loved gaming, especially role-playing games. She often visited local gaming shops in Gresham, participating in events and festivals. It was at one of these shops that she reconnected with Matthew Hester. They had first met in 1999, but hadn't crossed paths since. By then, Matt was divorced, and their reunion felt like fate. They started dating and married on July 14th, 2008. In 2011, the couple had their daughter, Alice, but their marriage soon started to fall apart. Matt, who had previously cheated in his first marriage, repeated the same mistake. Annie discovered his affair and tried to salvage their relationship by suggesting an open marriage, but the trust was broken. Despite her efforts, Annie realized that it was best for their daughter, Alice, to divorce. The divorce was finalized in August 2012, marking a new chapter in Annie's life. After the separation, Annie moved into a small one-bedroom apartment with Alice, sleeping in the living room so Alice could have the bedroom. Although the transition was tough, Annie was determined to provide for her daughter. She worked at an after-school program and a downtown call center. Her hard work paid off as she moved up to a management position, often taking overtime. However, child support from Matt was unreliable due to his job changes and financial struggles. Despite this, Annie worked tirelessly to balance her duties as a mother and provider. Despite the challenges, Annie kept her fun and adventurous spirit. She loved being creative, making Christmas ornaments for everyone each year, and having photo shoots with Alice for Christmas cards. On weekends, when Matt had Alice, Annie worked part-time as a face painter, using her free time to earn extra money for her daughter. Annie's creativity and love for life were central to who she was. She enjoyed painting faces at local festivals and even attended adult pirate camp during her vacations. Her enthusiasm for life remained strong, even through tough times. Matthew, on the other hand, had his own struggles. His income dropped significantly in 2012 due to poor cell phone sales, and by 2013, he moved in with a woman named Angela Rose McCraw, initially as a roommate. However, their relationship quickly turned romantic, and they married on September 22, 2014. At the crime scene, investigators were working quickly to gather the pieces of evidence that could help explain what had happened. Annie lived on the ground floor of her apartment, and when police arrived, they found that the front door was unlocked. However, it appeared that the killer had not entered through the front door, but had instead broken into Alice's bedroom window. The air conditioning unit had been removed, and the window was pried open, suggesting this was the point of entry. Nothing of value was taken from the apartment, which ruled out robbery as a motive for the attack. While police processed the scene, they were relieved to learn that Annie's daughter Alice had been staying with her father Matt and his new wife Angela that night. Alice was safe and unharmed, and it was a small comfort to know she had not witnessed the brutal crime. However, the details of the crime scene were chilling. Blood spatter analysis indicated that Annie had likely been asleep when the attack began. She had been stabbed over 60 times in the chest and head. There was evidence that Annie had tried to escape through the front door but was unable to get away before the attack overpowered her. In addition to the multiple stab wounds, there was an attempt to decapitate her, further highlighting the severity and brutality of the crime. Another strange and unsettling clue was the V times V carved into Annie's shoulder. The meaning behind this mark remained unknown, and investigators were uncertain whether it was a clue left intentionally by the killer or simply a tactic to confuse them. This symbol would be a focus of their investigation as they searched for any possible meaning. 3 bloody knives were found at the crime scene, with 2 of them taken from Annie's kitchen knife block and the third being a pocket knife. This suggested that the killer used whatever tools were available, possibly even taking them from the apartment. Investigators also found bloody shoe prints near the front door, raising the possibility that there may have been more than one attacker. With so many unanswered questions, the detectives knew they had to consider all possibilities and continue gathering evidence. As police questioned neighbors, they learned that many had heard disturbing noises around the time of the attack. One neighbor recalled hearing screams and thudding noises at around 11:15 p.m., and others reported hearing shouting, door slamming, and groaning after 1 a.m. One neighbor admitted that the noise was so loud they had turned up their TV to drown it out. Despite the loud disturbance, only one person called 911, Annie herself, as she lay dying from her injuries. This fact was deeply troubling to investigators, as it highlighted how, despite many neighbors hearing the commotion, no one intervened or called for help until it was too late. This only added to the sadness and tragedy of the situation, and it drove the detectives to increase their efforts to find answers. The neighbors' statements were crucial in helping police piece together a timeline of the events, but the most painful reality was that no one came to Annie's aid during the attack. The noise and screams had gone unheard by those who could have helped, leaving Annie to fight for her life alone. Annie made the 911 call at 3 a.m., which meant there was almost a 4-hour gap between when the attack started and when help was called. Detectives said this long period showed that the attack was drawn out and that Annie had suffered greatly. Her injuries were severe, and it seemed like the attacker had tortured her. This raised many questions about who could have done this and why. The investigation quickly focused on Annie's ex-husband, Matthew Hester, and his new wife, Angela McCraw Hester. Police told Matt about Annie's death and asked him to come in for questioning. When Matt arrived at the station, he seemed calm but was sad and worried about their daughter, Alice. Matt said that he had no reason to want Annie dead and that his main concern was their daughter. He insisted that he would never harm her.
And so I guess, obviously I told you at the house that your ex-wife is deceased.
But you
Didn't say how or anything like that. We'll talk about that in a minute or two.
Okay.
She had been stabbed. Officers responded down there. She had been injured. She was transported to the hospital, and she was pronounced dead at the hospital. And at this point, we're investigating this as homicide. Did your ex-wife say anything about having any problems with anyone?
I don't talk about her personal life.
Why did you guys get divorced?
I cheated on her.
Okay.
I ended up cheating on her.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not very good at this relationship thing.
How are your feelings towards Ann?
I'm mostly indifferent. I want to deal with her as little as possible.
So what were you and Angela doing last night?
Sleeping.
Okay. Do you know what time you went to bed?
I usually get into bed around 10 o'clock.
Okay. And was Angela with you, or was she staying up doing other things?
She was with me in bed.
Sorry. The thing I'm worried about is my daughter.
I hear you.
I would never do anything that would endanger my child.
Okay. And I'm glad to hear you say that, because that tells me what kind of parent you are.
Matt admitted to cheating on Annie, which ended their marriage. He said that before their divorce, he and Annie had agreed to an open relationship, meaning they both saw other people.
I ended up cheating on her.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not very good at this relationship thing.
He mentioned that Annie had met a couple through a pirate role-playing event and had a relationship with them. Matt suggested that anyone from Annie's past could be involved in the crime, but he didn't know any specifics. Police tracked down the couple, but they were not involved in Annie's murder. Despite Matt's explanation, investigators also noticed that he seemed to be in poor health. He was using a walking stick, which made detectives wonder if he could have physically done something so violent. They weren't sure if he could have attacked Annie in such a brutal way. However, they continued questioning him. Angela, Matt's wife, was also questioned. She told the police the same story as Matt. She said that they spent the evening at home playing games with their children, then went to bed early. She also said they were on their phones for a bit before going to sleep. Angela was sure that if Matt had gotten up in the night, she would have woken up because she was a light sleeper. Her story matched Matt's, and there was no evidence to suggest that either of them had anything to do with the crime.
Was on the verge of falling asleep to some criminal minds.
When you guys are sleeping, who gets the inside and who gets the outside?
Matt's against the wall.
Any chance that Matthew could have gone anywhere sometime during the night?
Oh God, every time he moves he wakes me up, so it's
Okay.
not a possibility. And I sleep like literally right up against him in his arms.
If he would have gotten up out of bed, you would know
Most
it.
definitely.
The investigation continued, looking closely at the relationships around Annie. While Matt and Angela both seemed to have alibis, investigators still couldn't rule them out completely. They were still looking for more clues and details about the crime. Although Matt and Angela's statements seemed to match, the detectives were still gathering information to make sure they understood the full picture. The investigation was still ongoing, and there were many things left to figure out. Matt and Angela's living situation raised questions in the investigation. They rented out every available space in their home, even having Angela's friend Karina sleep in the garage at one point. Angela's ex-husband, Aaron, was also a roommate and told detectives he had seen Matt and Angela in bed together. He also noted that he would have heard any movement of the car, as it was parked right outside the garage. Despite these odd circumstances, Matt and Angela gave their phones to the police and were released while the investigation continued. As detectives looked deeper into Matt and Angela's relationship with Annie, it became clear that their connection wasn't as friendly as it appeared. Tensions between the families grew after Angela moved in with Matt. Originally planning to rent a room, Angela and Matt became romantically involved within a month. Angela didn't want Matt and Annie to stay in contact, and Matt focused on keeping their daughter, Alice, at his house as much as possible. Just a month before Annie's murder, a judge granted Annie full custody of Alice and ordered Matt to pay over $13,000 in back child support and nearly $30,000 in legal bills. However, neither Matt nor Angela had jobs, raising concerns about how they planned to meet these financial obligations. Matt spent most of his time at home writing fantasy stories and creating role-playing games with Angela, which was not a sustainable lifestyle. Detectives began questioning how they were managing their finances. When detectives questioned Matt about the money he owed Annie, Matt explained that their lack of employment was balanced by the benefits they received for their children's disabilities and mental health issues. However, Angela's ex-husband, Aaron, offered a different view, saying Angela's obsession with diagnosing their children and putting them on medications was a major factor in their divorce. He believed the medications would harm their children, not help them. Aaron also revealed that Angela had focused on Alice, convinced she had bipolar disorder, which Annie strongly disagreed with. A psychologist supported Annie's concerns, stating that labeling a child with such a serious condition based on normal behavior was dangerous and could lead to unnecessary treatments. Angela called Child Protective Services, CPS, on Annie, claiming she was neglecting Alice. Annie was upset and didn't know who made the anonymous call. Feeling overwhelmed, she emailed a friend, sharing her confusion and frustration. However, CPS found no evidence to support the claim and closed the case. Although there were reasons like custody, jealousy, and money for why Matt and Angela might have wanted Annie dead, there was no physical evidence linking them to the murder. Detective Turnage interviewed them again, and Matt showed he had no injuries, even though the attack on Annie was brutal. Investigators expected to find marks on him, but there were none. Also, Matt's shoe size didn't match the prints found at the crime scene, which raised more doubts about his involvement. Though Matt and Angela's statements seemed consistent and they had willingly cooperated with the investigation, the lack of physical evidence made it difficult to directly implicate them. Detective Turnage continued to look for other leads and considered all possibilities. The investigation into Annie's murder was far from over, and there were still many questions that needed to be answered. Despite the apparent motives and suspicious behavior, detectives knew they had to carefully gather all the facts before making any conclusions.
I need to let you know that my investigation clearly shows that you're responsible for Anne's death and you're involved in it intimately.
Well, then you would have charged me. So
No, I wouldn't.
If you thought I did, you would charge me.
Nope, not necessarily.
Nothing to do with her death.
He made the comment in the interview, if you had enough on me, you would arrest me right now. Which I thought was a very, very arrogant comment. So that was
and also,
a little bit of a red flag for me.
Do innocent people say to you, historically, well, if you had enough, you'd arrest me?
Not at all.
They say, you're crazy. I had nothing to do with this. I couldn't kill anybody.
They're strong denials. Absolutely have the wrong person. They get mad. I would expect anger and frustration. Those are the signs of a truthful person. That told me as the investigator and the detective, I need to dig a little bit deeper and look a little bit more into this conversation.
I'm just going to keep my eyes shut and my head down.
Okay. How did it make you feel when you heard about her being killed?
Shocked. Non-believing. Extremely sad because Alice had lost her mom.
Did you guys sleep well? What happened? Did you get through the night, or?
For the most part, we slept just fine until my dog started whining.
Do you remember looking at a clock? Or?
I half opened my eye to look at the clock slightly and see that it was around 3.
Okay. Did you actually end up having to get out of bed to let him out? Or?
Yeah, I got up, walked downstairs, put their leashes on, took them potty, came back upstairs, put them in their kennels. And then I went to go potty and I ended up puking and myself at the same time.
Oh, that's horrible. I'm sorry.
And that's, I called Matt to help me, and he came and helped me. We took a shower to help get the poop off and rinse some of the sweat off and because apparently I was sweating.
Detective Turnage described Matt and Angela as bad actors, believing they were not being truthful. During her second interview, Angela contradicted her earlier statement, claiming she had been awake around 3 a.m. on the night of Annie's murder. She said she let the dogs out but became violently ill, requiring Matt's help to shower and change. This new version of events raised more questions but wasn't enough evidence to hold them. Once again, they were released, but police placed them under surveillance. Surveillance footage showed Matt walking without the cane he used during interviews, carrying heavy items and doing yard work, contradicting his claimed physical limitations. A neighbor's security camera added to the evidence, capturing someone leaving Matt and Angela's house before 1 a.m. on the night of the murder, heading toward Annie's apartment. While their roommate, Karina, insisted she heard nothing and believed they stayed home. Police began to suspect she might be covering for them. The rising evidence in their lies made it clear Matt and Angela were not being fully truthful. It had now been a year since Annie Hester's brutal murder, and despite the fact that Matt and Angela had moved almost 700 miles away, the investigation had not slowed down. The detective team continued to work persistently, analyzing all the evidence they had gathered while waiting for the results of several key forensic tests. One of the most critical pieces of evidence was the DNA testing from the knives found at the crime scene. The results were finally in, and they confirmed what investigators had suspected all along. The DNA on the knives, as well as Annie's blood, matched Angela McCraw Hester. In October 2017, Angela was arrested and charged with 2 counts of aggravated murder and first-degree burglary. One of the charges alleged that Angela had intentionally caused Annie's death, while the other claimed that Annie's death was the result of intentional torture. These were serious charges, carrying a potential death penalty if she was found guilty at trial. Despite all the evidence against her, Angela continued to maintain her innocence and pleaded not guilty to all charges.
In the car. No! In the car. I have kids that are going to be coming home. Tell me why you're arrested. Why am I being arrested, you stupid I have kids.
And I'm going to cut to the chase. Okay? You are under arrest for Anastasia's murder.
So you're saying that I killed her?
Yeah.
I would like a lawyer if that's the case.
Okay. All right.
Because I didn't. I was at home.
When Matt was re-interviewed by Detective Turnage, he took a much more direct approach. The detective showed him the autopsy photos of Annie, hoping to provoke some sort of confession. However, Matt continued to deny any involvement, claiming that he had no idea what had happened to Annie. He also said that he and Angela had discussed killing Annie in the past, but never had a concrete plan to carry out the murder.
I just want to get done so I can get home to my kids. Here's the deal, okay? Our investigation clearly shows that Angela committed the murder against Anastasia. We're not here to discuss if it happened. I don't care what you think. In fact, you've been under surveillance for the last 2 weeks by the U.S. Marshals. So we've got you walking across the parking lot at Costco, picking up soda boxes and water bottles, whatever the you were doing. You're not limping. You're not walking with a cane. I'm not buying the fibromyalgia. I'm not buying it, okay? That's her. She's cut to and tried to decapitate her. Cut all the way through her jaw. Stabbed all over her face. Carved a Roman numeral on her chest.
Based off the evidence, I don't have a choice but to accept what she did.
Okay.
I just woke up. My wife's panicking. All I can think of, okay, whatever you need, let's go get you. Take care. So we're going to go upstairs. I can help her get in the shower. She's bleeding.
What are you asking her? What is she saying?
She didn't say anything. She was just shaking.
Okay. Did you ask her what happened to her? Why is she bleeding?
No, I was just more getting her calmed down.
So the next day, the cops knock on your door. They tell you Anastasia's dead. Okay. You know that your wife came home in the middle of the night, cut up and bloody, and you helped her take a shower. What are you thinking? In your mind, even though you don't want to believe it, what are you thinking?
It's possible that she had done it.
Who else was involved in this? And this is where you need to think about it, because it wasn't you, it was somebody else. Who else was involved in this?
She talked about hiring someone.
Instead, Matt pointed the finger at Angela's ex-husband, Aaron, claiming that he might have been involved in the crime. Investigators brought Aaron in for questioning, hoping to uncover some new information, but Aaron's interview did not lead to any breakthrough in the case. He claimed that the interrogation had caused him emotional distress and left him with PTSD, but Detective Turnage remained skeptical of his claims. There was no evidence to suggest that Aaron was involved in Annie's murder, and he was never arrested or charged with anything related to the crime. Despite the evidence against Angela, Matt was not yet facing any significant charges. However, the detectives did manage to charge him with a misdemeanor for resisting and obstructing the investigation. This charge was soon dropped, but it was another indication that the authorities were building a case against him. As Angela sat in jail awaiting her trial, the investigation continued, with police working tirelessly to uncover every detail of what had happened that night. One of the most puzzling pieces of evidence that had been troubling investigators was the bloody shoe print found in Annie's apartment. The authorities were determined to find the matching shoe and determine who it belonged to. Their search led them to track Angela's phone data, which revealed that just 3 days after Annie's death, Angela had used Google Maps to search for a location. She had driven from her home located approximately 35 miles away, to Mount Hood National Forest on a cold and snowy day. This was a strange detail, but it would soon become critical to the case. Detective Turnage and his team made their way to the forest, and strangely, they found a brown boot wedged next to a fallen tree just yards off the road. The boot was traced back to a store where Angela had purchased it, and the store records linked the boot directly to her account. The tread of the boot matched the bloody prints found in Annie's apartment, and the size of the boot was consistent with Angela's foot size. This was a major breakthrough in the case. The discovery of the boot, along with the data showing Angela's presence in the forest, added a new layer of evidence that directly connected her to the crime. In addition to the boot, investigators also found a plastic bag containing clothes belonging to Angela, caught under a rock in the water. This was another significant discovery, showing that someone had clearly tried to dispose of evidence in the area. The authorities were amazed at how well the team had worked together to uncover these key pieces of evidence, which strengthened the case against Angela. In an attempt to explain away the mounting evidence, Angela's legal team could have argued that she had visited Annie's apartment for an innocent reason, such as helping to prepare food or assist Annie with something. They might have claimed that she had no intention of harming Annie and that the knives were used for unrelated purposes. However, the discovery of the boots, linked to Angela through Google Maps and her store account, was a game changer. This irrefutable evidence made it clear that Angela had been involved in the murder. Meanwhile, investigators also learned that Annie had taken out a $100,000 life insurance policy, naming her parents as the beneficiaries. Shortly after Annie's death, Matt had called the insurance company, inquiring about whether he or Alice could collect any of the policy's benefits. The company refused to provide him with any information, and he quickly hung up. This raised suspicions that Matt might have been motivated by financial gain, particularly since he had failed to pay the substantial child support he owed Annie and had been under financial strain. As the investigation continued, authorities started piecing together a clearer picture of the events leading up to Annie's murder. In 2019, Matt Hester was charged with 2 counts of conspiracy to commit murder, 1 count of solicitation to commit murder, and 1 count of hindering prosecution. These charges were linked to his involvement in the murder plot, although they did not directly implicate him in the physical act of killing Annie. In November 2020, just before the case was set to go to trial, Angela made a dramatic decision. She pleaded guilty to second-degree murder, despite the fact that the death penalty was no longer an option due to changes in legislation. This was a significant shift in her defense, and it signaled that she was now willing to take responsibility for her actions. Angela was sentenced to life in prison, with the possibility of parole after 25 years. Meanwhile, Matt's case continued to evolve. In June of 2020, the authorities had charged him with a series of crimes, including conspiracy to commit murder and obstruction. However, just a year later, in 2021, after the prosecution dropped the charges against him, Matt's fate seemed uncertain. While Angela had accepted responsibility for her role in the crime, Matt continued to maintain his innocence, and his legal team was hoping for a favorable outcome. Through it all, the investigators never stopped working tirelessly to uncover the truth. Their determination to solve the case and find justice for Annie Hester ultimately led to the conviction of Angela McCraw Hester, and the case remains a powerful example of perseverance and dedication by law enforcement. The evidence, combined with Angela's change of heart, ensured that she would be held accountable for her role in Annie's tragic death. Though the full details of Matt's involvement may never be fully understood, the case brought closure to Annie's family, who had been left searching for answers for far too long. In August 2021, Matthew Hester pleaded guilty to soliciting Aaron McCraw for murder and delaying prosecution, receiving a 56-month prison sentence, far lighter than expected. While incarcerated, Matt and Angela divorced and have had no contact since. Angela avoids discussing the case, often saying, "That's between me and God." Her children were placed in foster care, while Annie's daughter Alice was adopted by Annie's mother. Annie had always worked hard to provide the best life she could for Alice, despite the challenges she faced. Her boss described her as an inspiring figure in the workplace. Annie's incredible work ethic and ability to juggle various responsibilities were unmatched, but it was her unwavering positivity that truly set her apart. She always maintained a smile, even during difficult times, and put others' needs before her own. Even in her final moments, Annie showed strength and determination. She fought with all her might, refusing to give up, and her courage continues to resonate with those who knew her. Her legacy lives on through Alice, who, despite the tragic loss of her mother, was given a chance at a new, loving home. Thank you for watching our channel, where we uncover the most intriguing and real-life crime stories. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and leave your thoughts in the comments below. Subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell to never miss an update. Stay tuned for more gripping cases coming your way. Until next time, stay curious and stay safe.